Welcome back to the Gravitational Wave podcast, Listening to the Cosmos. I'm the creator and host, Debatri, and today I'm talking to two amazing girls all the way from Monash University and Swinburne University in Australia. Please welcome Isobel and Debatri. So, first, let me talk to Isobel. Isobel is a third year PhD student at Monash University. Isobel, please tell us something more about yourself.
Thank you. As you said, I'm a third year PhD student and I study gravitational waves, as I guess lots of your guests on this podcast probably do. So I look at eccentric binary sources of gravitational waves, and I'm interested in them because their eccentricity can tell us about how they form and the kind of environments that they form in. And then extending on that, I'm interested in what learning about those environments can tell us about the universe and about the evolution of structures in the universe.
Excellent. How about you, Debatri? Please tell our listeners something more about yourself and about your work.
Thank you, Debatri. I'm Debatri. I'm originally from India. I'm a final year PhD student at Swinburne, and I model theoretical compact binaries, which can be either binary black holes or binary neutron stars, and I make them merge inside giant supercomputers. Why do I do this? Because these big mergers create gravitational waves in reality. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to understand the astrophysics, the theoretical backgrounds of these mergers. What type of merger is more important in what type of environment? For example, Isobel mentioned eccentricities. So I look at binary black holes, which are coming from star clusters, and the dynamical activity. A lot of other stars in the environment can influence the orbital properties, including the eccentricity of the mergers. And I also look at isolated binary evolution when there is no other stellar companions present apart from just one binary, and look at how those mergers are different from the ones that are coming from denser environments.
This is really interesting. And so, Debatri, you were at Swinburne University, right? And you were a PhD student as well.
Yes.
And both Isobel and Debatri are part of the AusGrav collaboration, the Australian Gravitational Wave collaboration. All right, so let me ask a little bit more about you. Isobel, tell me something. Like, did you always want to be a physicist? And also tell me something about your background. Do you come from Australia, or how did you end up being a physicist in Australia?
Yeah, I sometimes ask myself that. Because originally when I was at school, I wanted to be either an artist or something to do with English literature. I was kind of more interested in that side of things. I liked science. But I didn't really like maths very much. So I didn't really think that science was going to be for me, because I knew that maths was a big part of it. And I wasn't very good at maths because I didn't like it. But then it got to my final qualifications in the UK, and I decided to keep my options open. So I'd done physics, fine art and English literature, which is great for keeping your options open and having a wide breadth of education. But it's not great for actually doing anything at university, because that's not really specifying the kind of subject that you want to study. So I ended up actually doing a foundation year in physics and in science, which gave me the right kind of background that I would actually need to study physics further on. And I did that because I realized that English and art were really fun things that I really enjoyed doing. And I thought I would kind of ruin them for myself if I ended up studying them. So I decided to do physics instead. And also because I had not done as well as I'd done in art and English in my physics examinations. So I decided that I would show physics who was boss and study it further. So I ended up doing the maths foundation and the physics foundation at university. Kept doing that at university, ended up loving it, ended up finding out about gravitational waves. And before I'd kind of done this extra research on gravitational waves in my undergraduate at university. I wasn't really that fussed about astronomy. I thought stars were obviously beautiful, and I thought the universe was really interesting, but I wasn't really that keen on using like optical telescopes. I didn't really enjoy those classes at university, but then I found out about gravitational waves and about how cool they are and about how they're like wobbling the universe that we exist in as we're just sitting here, which I thought was just incredible. So I made sure that I did projects in my undergraduate to do with gravitational waves. And I ended up doing pretty well in those projects. And then I decided that I wanted to do a PhD doing gravitational waves. And at the time, this was like, I think, just after the first gravitational wave detection had been announced, that I was kind of thinking about doing a PhD. And at that point, there weren't that many gravitational wave PhD projects in the UK. So I was Googling around looking for the kind of projects I would want to do. And I ended up stumbling across the website of my now supervisor, Paul Lasky. And I was looking through the projects that he was doing and that he was working on. And I just thought they all sounded so incredible and so interesting. So I just sent him an email saying, please work with me, basically. Please employ me as a PhD student. And a few Zoom calls later, a few Skype calls, I guess it was at the time. I just decided that I wanted to come and live in Australia. Him and my other supervisor, Eric, had shown me all of these amazing pictures of the rainforest here. And they also said that the coffee here was really great. So they basically convinced me that Melbourne was the place that I should live. And now I live it. And I can indeed confirm the coffee is excellent.
Oh, this is super cool. So I'm sure that many young girls like you who are not that great in physics or math now are inspired by this story and they want to go for gravitational wave career. So I know Paul and Eric personally, and I think they are great people, really cool people. So it must be fun working with them.
It is very fun. Yeah. Our meetings sometimes devolve into them just telling me off for not knowing about lots of like cultural references that they make. They're always referring to films and things that I haven't seen. And my homework is usually to go and watch this film that they've referred to or watch this YouTube video of a song that came out before I was born or something.
That actually brings me to the next question. But maybe first I'll ask Debatri as well. So Debatri, how about you? Did you always know that you wanted to be a physicist, or what was the point when you decided that this is it? This is the career that I want to take up?
So I was 12 years old in 7th grade when physics was introduced as a subject in the school curriculum. And within the first 2 chapters, I think, which I was reading by myself, I decided this is it. Like before that, I really enjoyed history, I enjoyed evolution, but nothing of all my school subjects actually held me, captured me like that. And at that time in my school, there was actually a problem with the physics teacher. There was a vacancy going on, and the school couldn't find a permanent teacher. So we had like 7 or 8 teachers changed within a span of 4-5 months. And all those time, I went on through the syllabus and I realized no matter what I do, I'm not going to do anything better than this. So yeah, I think it was pretty early on, and I did really well in physics. Then I think it was 2 years later after that, I was going through some books in my parents' collection. They also have a background in science. Both are they did their degrees in biology. My dad is a virologist. So they have this huge array of different types of science books, as well as old school popular science books. So the volumes that used to come in the 80s and 90s. And I was going through them and I found a chapter on black holes. And there was this huge illustration of a black hole, and at the corner of which it was written, artist's conception of a black hole. And I was reading about it and I just realized, this is so mysterious. I have to be an astrophysicist. I guess that's where it all started. So I went on to get honors in physics and then a master's degree in physics. And then I was thinking of what type of actually project to do. So basically, my the undergrad projects that I did in my masters, one was in radio astronomy, the other was finding stellar orbits, in different types of galactic potentials, and but I was still considering which line to choose. So I did a small project in quantum gravity, and then I realized I have to find out something that is going better with me. No offense to all those who are doing quantum gravity, but maybe I decided then that astrophysics is my thing. And there were just one detection of gravitational waves back then that was announced, essentially. And I was looking through all the job positions that were available, PhD positions that were available at that time. And I was applying to different places, but I found just one, the PhD position that I have right now, advertised as one in gravitational waves. And I applied. And at that time, after all the Zoom, Skype calls again back then, Skype calls and interviews and everything, I found myself, I've been offered 3 PhDs at 3 different continents, and only one was in gravitational waves. That was this one. And I decided to take it. And some told me, some of my friends told me, maybe it's too much of a bet. There's only one detection till now. But then within 2 weeks, there was another detection that was announced. And still, nobody was that convinced that it's going to be something big in the next few years. And that wasn't the reason why I was pursuing it, but I was just interested. So I came here on the first day of my introduction. Jared, my primary supervisor, introduced me to the team of OSGRAP at Swinburne, and my co-supervisor then, Matthew Bales, who was also the director of OSGRAP. He just asked me, so there are more binary neurostars in the universe, and so why are we observing 2 black hole mergers and no double neurostar merge till now? And I answered it, and he was happy with the answer. So that was a good thing that happened. And exactly 3 days later, there was the first double neutron merger ever observed. And that was phenomenal, very exciting as a new PhD student. And of course, that year, so 3 months later, the Nobel Prize in Physics was given for the detection of gravitational waves. And I'm just so glad that I chose this, because I enjoy it so immensely.
Thank you for that, Debatri. So this is really fun to hear about how you two ended up here. I'm going to ask the next question to Isobel. And so you were just talking about these cultural references, right? So this is something I personally myself have faced, like these adaptation issues. So I myself have lived in different continents. I had to learn different languages. So how hard has it been for you to adapt to new circumstances? So you are originally from UK, right? So how different is it in Australia, and what are your challenges to work in a different environment?
Yeah, that's actually an interesting one, because I wasn't expecting there to really be any kind of culture shock when I moved here, because obviously the language is the same, and I just expected that it would be pretty much the same as the UK. And obviously I knew that the temperature, the weather would be different, but I didn't really expect it to be so different. And the culture as well. So obviously the temperature and the weather here is pretty nuts. I mean, in Melbourne, we don't get quite as hot temperatures as you get further north in Australia, but it's still much, much hotter than I was used to. And I just remember when we first moved here, going out on the days where it feels so oppressively hot outside and just wondering how anyone could want to live here, like, permanently, because it's so difficult to be outside and to go around in those times. But since then, I've really kind of fallen in love with Melbourne, and I love it here now. And I think that if the rest of my family in the UK would just up and move to Melbourne, then I would stay here probably as long as I could, because it's beautiful, and the animals and the nature here is just incredible. And yeah, it's lovely. But in terms of the culture, it's definitely much more laid back here. And maybe that comes out of the weather. I don't know. Maybe it's just too hot to be always trying to go at 100 miles an hour all the time. But it definitely feels a lot more laid back. I think people are generally kind of nicer and more friendly. I think there's typically in the UK quite a culture of standoffishness. And I think that's just because we're all awkward. We don't mean to be mean, but people are generally more like upfrontly friendly in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
That's my experience anyway.
That's cool. Okay, Debatri, how about you? How different was it from what you expected? What were your challenges of moving to a new environment?
So I thought that Melbourne is a big city, right? But then I came here and I was like, where are all the people? Where are all the people? Because I'm so used to India and born and brought up. I'm just used to seeing people everywhere. So yeah, I think that's the most kind of shock that I got, that it's a big city, it's so nice and shiny and everything is so nice, just where are the people? Other than that, I learned some funny languages, like terms that they use. For example, I learned that brekkie means breakfast. I was very confused in the morning why my friend was asking me for a brekkie when I always like, why do I want to take a break in the morning? Yeah, so other than that, I really love Melbourne. There's MCG here, so we've been there to watch cricket sometimes, and in general, it's really nice. Yeah,
I'm happy to hear that. This is amazing. So, the other thing that you mentioned, Debatri, so you talked about this artist's impression of a black hole, and this laid like a fascinating impression in your head, right? And this inspires a lot of people. So, how important is outreach right now in your life? So, do you really are you passionate about outreach?
I love interacting with people of different ages and of different nationalities who are all united by their interest in the cosmos. And funny that you mentioned that picture, because I think last year is 2020. So 2019, August, we do a National Science Week in Australia. And Swinburne does a special public lecture on that day for an hour. And for the 2019 one, I was presenting there, and I chose the topic on gravity and black holes. There was a huge positive feedback, and I basically ended my slides with two things. One is with the artist's impression of the black hole. So I asked my parents to take a picture of that book, of that page, and showed it to the people, saying that this is when I was reading about black holes, and then showed them the image taken of the shadow of the black hole that year only when it was released. So I showed that side by side. Like, I started reading about these things when it was there, and now I'm doing my PhD and it's here. It just feels so personal. I have no words to say sometimes. So I think outreach is extremely important for me. I volunteer for different outreach events that Osgraph does, and they take really serious attention in building different types of softwares for people that you can just download for free from App Store. And it's quite marvelous. Like, you can play games, you can learn about the universe, basically about gravity, just by playing games on your app. So that is pretty cool. And there are also educational apps that you can just install. And it's always very fulfilling when someone you do not know is asking you questions and you're answering them, and they're so happy about it, and you feel a connection in that. So, yeah.
This is amazing. So this is exactly what I wanted to know about you, Isobel, as well. So I know that you are also like passionately taking part in outreach activities, and I also heard about your book. So do you want to say something about that?
I feel like one of those, like an artist on the radio who goes on and they have to like segue in a bit about their new album or something. Yeah, so I've done a book. I've written and illustrated a book about the the histories of the names of the planets in our solar system and how they've come about through the evolution of language in Europe. So English language, word evolution, etymology is the official name for the evolution of words. And I think it's really interesting to tie together different subjects to get people engaged with science, because I think my personal experience of science at school and also maths at school is that it just wasn't relatable for me. And I think like these days I can just see the beauty in science for science's sake and the beauty of mathematics for its own kind of purpose. But when I was at school and when I was a kid, I really needed things to be relatable for me and to be able to link them to things in my everyday life or to kind of human stories. So I thought that it would be a good idea to kind of introduce people to the idea of space and the observation of space, and also the history of the observation of space, by talking about the stories that we connect to the objects in space and the stories that humans have always connected to the objects in space, and how our words have actually been influenced by the objects that we've seen in space, and about how our names for those objects have been influenced by the evolution of humans. So yeah, I just thought that would be an interesting way to kind of introduce kids to space in general and to the study of the planets.
I think this is a wonderful idea. So I'm actually looking forward to read the book myself. And it's also, this amazes me because we see how things add up, right? So you mentioned that you had a lot of interest in art and English literature before you started to love physics. And I see how you are bringing it all together. So this is really fantastic.
Yeah, I just think I'm stubborn and I've just refused to drop any of the things that I wanted to do.
Let me assure you that you do have to be stubborn, and I am very happy that you are here where you are today. But let me assure you, so I have recently become a professor in physics, and this is a long struggle. So be stubborn, do your own
thing.
Thank
you.
And yeah, because we do have a long way to go, right? So the fight is still not over, especially as women in STEM disciplines. It's not easy. So yeah. Right. So the other thing that I'm very interested to know about is that recently I know that you and so Debatri and Isobel are working on a secret mission. So there is a coloring book of women in physics that you are preparing, and this is for a special fundraising. So do you want to tell me what this is all about?
Yeah. So actually, we decided to do this fundraising because we are part of this leadership program called Homeward Bound. It's a global initiative to give certain leadership skills for women in STEM. There's one problem of underrepresentation in the STEM fields, and this gender bias is constructed. It's artificial. So there's one problem that we need to handle in the first place. And the second thing, which all of humankind is facing right now, is the climate crisis. So the aim of this project, of this initiative, is actually train women in STEM to become leaders of tomorrow and combat the crisis that humanity is going to face in this very near future. The program started 7 years ago, and it's going to happen for 10 years in total, so another 4 years are left. And each year, they select 100 women, and it's a year-long program where they train you with all the skills that are required, and then at the end of it, there's a global conference that happens first in Argentina, Ushuaia, and then there's a 3-week-long Antarctica trip that happens in a ship. So it's really amazing. It's a great honor to be a part of. And I applied because it tallied with my vision of the world and what I wanted to give back to the community, to the society that I come from. And though it's partially funded, it's not fully funded. And we have received some help from OSGRAP, from Swinburne. It's still a little bit hard as PhD students. So we decided to do this coloring book, which would fulfill our dream of reaching out to the younger generation and inspire them with the history of this amazing women in science. and B, also tally with the Homeward Bound initiative, which visualizes to have more women in STEM speak up, speak about their experiences, speak about other women in this field, and inspire basically more people.
So I'm sure you are very excited about this. Tell me a little bit more about who organizes this, and how did you end up being selected for this Homeward Bound program?
So it's organized, I think the leader is a woman called Fabian Dattner, and she set this up a number of years ago with, I think, two of the other leaders of the program. And their idea, I think, as Debatri's already mentioned, was to train 1,000 women over 10 years to be the effective leaders of tomorrow that we really need to be able to combat the climate crisis. And they set this up, and it was this kind of crazy idea that they had. And they took the first 100 women on this Antarctic voyage in 2016, I believe. And we are in the 6th cohort. So we applied last year. I think it was just towards the beginning of when the lockdown was happening in Melbourne. So that would have been kind of March time. And the application process basically involved going through a number of questions and answering why you thought that women in leadership was important and why you were a good fit. You had to send your CV, and you also had to film a 3-minute video, which I personally found the hardest part of the application process. It was basically just an introduction to yourself and kind of whittling down into 3 minutes your entire application and why you were really passionate about this project and why you wanted to be involved, which I know both me and Debatri found pretty challenging because, yeah, it's kind of, I guess, nerve-wracking, even just filming a video that you have complete control over, to be sending this out to people that you don't know and being kind of vulnerable in that way. But it's an important step in the process of becoming a leader, is being comfortable with being vulnerable.
Tell me about the fundraising a little bit more. So why are you looking for support, and where are you looking for support? Can we support this program as well?
I mean, anyone can. We have a GoFundMe page, which is kind of just for smaller donations from your average person, but we're also reaching out to companies and trying to get funds from these kind of bigger organizations that might be interested in supporting women in leadership and supporting the fight against the climate crisis.
All right. So this is a great opportunity. So I'm sure that people listening to this podcast, many of them will be very happy to donate to this cause, to support two amazing women in STEM disciplines and also who are fighting for climate change. So I would request people to come forward, and when your coloring book of women in physics is ready, do share it with us. We will definitely post it on our blog, the LIGO-India blog Gravity Matters, and bring it to the notice of people so that I am sure more people can come up and help you with this wonderful cause.
That would be amazing. We're trying to get the book finished ASAP because it's pretty cool. I'm pretty proud of it where it is already. It's kind of, yeah, it's a coloring book, but it's also got history of women in physics and women in science. So
Excellent.
It should be a valuable purchase. So one of the things I'm trying to do for fundraising is to run, walk and bike the width of the widest point of Antarctica. So that's 5,339 kilometers. And I'm trying to do that over the period of 365 days. So I started last week, I think. I think I'm about 200 kilometers in right now. And yeah, it's tiring, but that's something that I'm trying to do to raise awareness, I guess.
Fantastic. This is amazing. Yeah. Okay. So Debatri, do you want to say something about your hobbies and passions and interests?
So I'll talk a little bit about dance because I was trained as a dancer since when I was 3.5 years old. Before I even started school, my mother was a dancer. And I would see her perform, and I really liked it. I liked the glamour, and she looked so graceful. So yeah, I really enjoy dancing, and I have a diploma in Manipuri dance, which is a classical Indian dance form. But yeah, after, like, from kind of the middle of my honors degree and then also during my masters, I drifted a little bit away from it. But then after moving in Melbourne, I started to kind of learn different types of other dance forms, which I always wanted to, just to try it, to understand the flavor. And I tried Latin, I tried cha-cha, I tried belly dancing, I tried a little bit of Kathak, and it was really amazing. And even now, during the lockdown, I had a little bit of injury. But apart from that, when I'm feeling really stressed or just in general, dancing gives me kind of the feeling which is like meditating. um, my mood, if I'm really sad or if I'm stressed, it just liberates me from the inside. It helps me connect with myself, I guess, in a way. So yeah, that is my hobby, and that is something I'm really passionate about. Other than that, I'm an avid reader, so I love reading literature, usually classics, English and Bengali, sometimes in translation. um, that's something I've kept since childhood and have managed to carry on till now. The third thing I learned after moving in Melbourne is that I was always wanting to be a pirate in my imagination sometimes, after reading Kidnapped or Treasure Island as a child. So there's a Melbourne based tall ship here, which is called Enterprise, and they train you. You can be a voluntary crew member, and I was introduced to it by my colleague at Swinburne, Mark. And I started learning things about sailing, and I actually became a voluntary crew member for tall ships. So, yeah, that's kind of my hobbies.
Thank you so much for sharing this, both of you, Debatri and Isobel. So I completely agree. I think all of us have at some point in our lives, being inspired by a scientific illustration. It could be a book, it could be a science fiction film. So I think it's a great thing that you are transferring this now to the next generation through your books and through your activities, through your outreach programs. And I think this is the most fulfilling part of being a scientist, is to reach out to people and tell them exactly what we are doing and to motivate the others to do this as well. So this has been a fantastic conversation with Debatri and Isobel. I wish you both a lot of luck, not only with your Antarctica expedition, but also through all your pursuits, scientific, artistic, and outreach. So this is very inspiring for a lot of young girls who want to be gravitational wave scientists like you. Thank you very much for being on the podcast. We have a lot of episodes like this coming up soon, so please stay tuned to listening to the Cosmos. This is Debbie signing off here.
Well, thank you for having us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. It was really inspiring and a very sparkly talk.
It was a pleasure for me as well.